Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the sanctuary. I'm Mike Robertson, the pastor. Thank you so much for taking some time on a Sunday morning to tune in and be with us during our live stream here on YouTube. I see lots of good conversation going on in the chat room, and I love that. Appreciate you showing up a little bit early and getting to know everybody a little bit more. That's a great thing. I don't think I have much to announce today. There's certainly not much going on. So, let me remind you of our Wednesday night Zoom chats. We have a great time at these. Sometimes we play a game, sometimes we do some discussion questions, but it's always fun. There's always lots of laughs, and you can be sure that you're in on it if you are getting our emails, if you're on our email subscription list from the sanctuary. And if you'd like to be added to that list, send me an email. It's just Mike Robertson at sanctuaryaustin.com, and we'll add you to the mailing list, and you'll have the link in an email each Tuesday or Wednesday that will tell you where to go for the Zoom chats. I think that's it. Did you watch the music video this morning? Did you watch Megan and Mac? Suggest you take a look at that. It's very, very nice. They're sitting outside singing a cappella. It's just a very pretty sound, and it's great to see them being able to sing together without any equipment, without any technology involved. Just the human voice is a beautiful thing. So I hope you're doing well. If you have any problems, if you're having any concerns, please let me know. That's what I'm here for, is to help you, to encourage you, to support you in whatever way I can. But let's get to the message today. You already know what it's called. It's called Grace in the Garage, right? Grace in the Garage. Now, I have a hard time, even after several years, I kind of have a hard time thinking of myself as a preacher. And I know several of you have a hard time thinking of me as a preacher too. But I'm really a storyteller. And I take some consolation in the fact that Jesus was a storyteller too. So I think I'm in good company. So I want to tell you some stories today because I know that's what people like. I know that's what people respond to. Today I want to talk about the garage. Now, for a lot of my life, I haven't had a garage. There were probably 25 years, no more than that, more like 30 years, when I didn't have a garage at all. There have been other times in my life when I had a garage, but I couldn't get my car in the garage because it was full of so much other stuff. But it took me a while to appreciate garages. I grew up in a small town. And when I say small, I mean really, really small. Population 742 down in South Texas. And there were no sidewalks in our town. There were no curbs on the street. The grass would just kind of grow right to the edge of the asphalt and then just kind of peter out. And if you think I'm kidding about how small our town was, we would, as kids, get on our bicycles and we could ride anywhere in the town and nobody ever worried about us. Our moms were never concerned about us. We could be gone for hours and they were not only not worried, they were actually delighted we were out of the house for a while. But let me show you, this is the town. Here's a map of the city I grew up in. You see how many streets there are? About 4 parallel streets and only 8 blocks or so. So we could ride our bikes and literally cover the whole town many times in the course of a day. So we knew where everybody's house was. We knew what was going on. We knew which houses were falling down, which were abandoned, which ones had kids in them. And so me and my best friend at the time when I was about 10 years old, my best buddy was also named Mike. And we would take off for hours on our bikes. We would pretend to be superheroes or motorcycle riders or race car drivers. Our imaginations and a bicycle was all we needed to keep ourselves entertained for an entire day. One day we were driving around the streets of this little town and we pulled up in front of a house that we knew was empty. And it had a garage, but there was no garage door. It was just an open space. No concrete floor in it either, just caliche dirt on the floor. So it was hot. We pulled into the garage just to cool off and get in the shade for a minute. But while we were in there, we started looking around to see if anything had been left when this house had been abandoned. We looked around and didn't see a lot. You know, there were license plates nailed to the walls and stuff like that, old pieces of lumber and things like that. But then we found the knife. That's right. We found a little knife, a little paring knife with a blade about this long. And it was old and the handle was worn and the blade was rusty. But on that blade, there was something red. There was dried red stuff on the blade of this knife in this abandoned garage. And we took the knife and we got on our bikes and we rode back to my house and we sat on the swing set in our yard. And Mike and I were discussing what should we do, because we knew immediately this was a crime scene. Something terrible had happened here. And Mike and I had both read all the Hardy Boys books. We knew that this was a crime, the kind of crime that can only be solved by two 10-year-old boys on bikes. But we're sitting there in the swings discussing what our next move should be. My mother's in the kitchen washing dishes, and there's a window right over the sink. It looks out onto where our swing set was. And she's washing dishes, and she can't hear everything we say, but she hears words occasionally like murder and weapon and evidence and criminals and police. And finally, she turns off the water and she says, "What in the world are y'all talking about?" And so we came clean. I said, "Mom, look, we found this. There's been something terrible happened at this abandoned house up the street." Well, she does what happened very often. She called my dad, who was right next door at the church. He was the pastor of the Baptist church. And so he comes over and we pour out our story again. "Dad, we think something terrible's happened. Look, here's the murder weapon." And he looks at it and says, "Which house is it?" And we pointed it out to him about a block and a half away. He walks down there. He goes in the garage for about 45 seconds. And then he walks back. And he says, "Didn't you see the can of red paint that somebody had opened with a knife and used the blade to stir the red paint? You didn't see that can of paint?" Oh. So my dad was obviously a great detective. He solved that case in less than a minute, but it wasn't the outcome we thought it was going to be, but it was something really fascinating for a while, and it started in a garage. Lots of good things start in a garage. But before I get too far into the garage, let me share with you this passage of scripture. Jesus is talking here in Luke chapter 8, and he says, "No one lights a lamp and then covers it with a wash tub or shoves it under the bed. No, you set it up on a lampstand so that those who enter the room can see their way." We're not keeping secrets. We're telling them. We're not hiding things. We're bringing everything out into the open. So be careful that you don't become misers of what you hear. Generosity begets generosity. Stinginess impoverishes. Stinginess makes you poor. That's not the only thing that happened in a garage in my little town. Later that same summer, I was riding my bike around by myself, and I saw a crowd gathered around a garage. Now, when I say crowd in a town of 742 people, probably 9 people, maybe 10, standing in front of this garage. Again, open garage. This one had a concrete floor in it, though. And I got closer on my bike, and I got up to where I could see in the garage. And inside the garage, there were 4 teenage boys. And they had a drum set. And they had guitars, and they had microphones and amplifiers. And I was amazed because up to that point, I didn't know anybody that could play any kind of musical instrument. But as I was standing there watching, one of the teenage boys goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they launch off into this song, a song that I had actually heard on the radio, and this little light went off in my head, and I thought, wait, real people can make music? See, I had never really thought about where entertainment comes from, but it's made just by people exercising their talents. And so these guys are playing music, and it was a revelation to me. This was less than a year after the Beatles had appeared on Ed Sullivan. And that event was supposedly responsible for selling more guitars than anything in history, because everybody who saw the Beatles said, "Ooh, I want to learn how to play the guitar. I want to be in a band." And so thousands and thousands and thousands of people bought instruments and they began practicing in the garage. It was so prevalent that the term garage band became a generic term for a kind of music, a pretty simple kind of music, usually 3 chords, simple songs like Louie Louie and Hang On Sloopy and Wild Thing. You can play all those songs with 3 chords. So it was easy for beginners to all of a sudden be able to play songs. And garage band became a whole style of music. And it was so popular that when Apple Computer decided to put a program in their computers to help people record, to basically have your own recording studio, that program is also called GarageBand. Well, I've learned, if I didn't know before that point, I've learned that some fascinating things begin in a lowly garage. Let me tell you about some of them. These 2 guys, Bill and Dave, in 1939, they were hobbyists. They started making electronics in Dave's garage. And they were getting so good at it, and people were wanting to purchase what they put together, that they decided to go into business. And they could have called it Bill and Dave's Electronics, but they decided to use their last names instead. Hewlett Packard. Massive Hewlett Packard company started in a garage with these 2 guys putting together electronic equipment. Or how about this young cartoonist from Kansas City named Walter? He moved to LA, but he didn't have any money. He had to set up his studio in his garage so he could draw one at a time the cells that he wanted to make animated cartoons from. Maybe you've heard of him. His last name is Disney, but he started in his garage. Or a company started in 1948 by 2 USC graduates in a garage in Pasadena. They were limping along, just trying to make some money. They were making slingshots. And as you can imagine, that was not a really hot commodity, slingshots, but that's what they were known for at first. In fact, they decided to name their company after the sound of the slingshot hitting a target. And they named their company Whammo. Whammo. And they kept making slingshots, but eventually they started having some better ideas. And they came out with something called a Frisbee. And then they came out with the Super Ball and the hula hoop and the slip and slide. And the Whammo company became one of the hugest toy companies in the world, the most successful ones. And it started right there in that garage. In another garage, a married couple, Ruth and Elliot Handler, were also making wooden toys in their garage. But Ruth noticed her daughter had stopped playing with her baby doll. And she said, "Why are you not playing with your doll anymore?" And the little girl said, "I'm not a baby anymore. I don't like a baby doll." And Ruth thought, well, maybe we should make a doll that's all grown up. And so she designed a grown-up doll and named it after her daughter, Barbara, who they called Barbie. Huge company, Mattel, starts in a garage. Or these 2, look at these 2 hippies, both named Steve. Steve and Steve. They decided they wanted to build a computer in 1976. And that sounds pretty simple today. You hear people all the time saying, "Yeah, I'm building a new PC." In 1976, this was crazy. A computer was something that filled a room and had a team of scientists in lab coats to run it and keep it running. And they decided to build a computer themselves. And they built it in a little wooden box, and they called it the Apple computer. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Or a little bit closer to home, a kid named Michael. Michael was from Houston, but he bought one of those early Apple computers, and he took it completely apart. Fortunately, he was able to put it all back together again once he figured out how it worked. And so when he came to UT, he began making and selling computers. He would build them in his dorm room in Jester Hall at UT, and he would sell them out of his room or out of the trunk of his car. And eventually he was making so much money making computers, he quit school and started building them in his garage and started putting his name on them, the Dell computer. 22 years ago, two guys in Menlo Park, California, started out in a garage, and they were coming up with a new program. It wasn't really even a product you could hold in your hand. It was a program. It was a website. They wanted people to be able to find things more easily on the internet, and they designed a website. And they were casting about what can we name this website, and they decided to use this word that most of us had never said before 22 years ago. It is now the most visited website in the world. You know what the second most visited site is? YouTube, which is also owned by Google and which is bringing you this program this morning. Amazing things happen. Why do we like these stories so much? Stories of great, even life-changing things that start out in the most humble surroundings, like a garage. Why do we love that so much? Well, I think it's because we have a garage band religion. Oh, there may have been no garages 2,000 years ago, but there was certainly the equivalent. There were barns, there were stables where you kept your mode of transportation. And isn't it amazing that the creator of the universe would decide to come visit us, and he didn't choose a palace to be born in. He chose the garage. He chose the stable, the shed, a humble, meek, unfancy place for the Creator to show up. You know, the last church I belonged to got its start in a schoolhouse. I'm not sure how the sanctuary got their start, but I am sure that, like all these amazing companies, it started with just a couple of dreamers. It started with a few people that had a vision for something. Because think about it, why would anybody want to start a new church, especially in a large city like Austin, where there were already so many choices? There were plenty of churches in Austin. Why would somebody start a new one? Well, it was because somebody had a dream. Somebody had a desire to do something a little bit different. And so a church starts, and it starts out very small, and a lot of them don't last. This one has lasted 65 years. But a couple of years ago, it was just barely hanging on. It was on the verge of turning off the lights and locking the doors. But see, I have a dream too. I have a vision too. My dream is about a church that's different. A church for people who don't like to go to church. Because you know what? I don't like to go to church. I wanted a church where people would come because it was more about grace than about guilt. Not being told how bad they were, but being told how much God loves them. More about the love of God and less about the judgment of God. I wanted a church that was a place you go to because you want to, not instead of going because you feel like you got to. It's Sunday morning, got to go to church. I wanted a church that people wanted to go to. Well, it helped. People responded. But even before COVID started, we still had plenty of empty seats available here. There was nobody standing in line to get on Sunday mornings. And I wondered many times, what am I doing wrong? What's missing? What are people not showing up for? You remember that band I saw in the garage of my little village where I was growing up? I wish I could tell you that band grew up to be ZZ Top, but they didn't. In fact, as far as I know, they never played anywhere outside that garage. That brings me to this thought. There's a kind of a cutesy saying that I've said before. You may have said it before. I don't say it any longer, but I used to say it, and it's something you would say when maybe you would ask somebody, hey, are you a Christian? And they would say, well, I go to church just about every Sunday. And then you were supposed to say, well, sitting in church doesn't make you a Christian any more than sitting in a garage makes you a car. We thought that was funny. It's a true statement, but it's a smart alecky way to say it. It's true that sitting in a garage does not make you a car. But think about this. What does make you a car? I would submit to you, what makes you a car is the ability to get out of the garage and move on down the road. And I think that's what makes you a Christian too. The ability to get out of this garage and to move out into the world where you have a chance to change the world. See, we have tricked ourselves today into thinking it's all about staying in the garage. I'm safe in here. I don't have to worry about anything. I'm just going to stay in the garage. Watch any car commercial. You never see a car sitting in a garage. You always see it driving at nighttime or driving along the Pacific Coast Highway with the top down, and driving over stunt courses to show how durable they are and how safe they are. The cars are always in motion. Nobody ever watches a commercial like that and says, boy, I wish that car was in my garage so I could go out and look at it every day. See, folks, the garage is not a destination. The garage is where you go to get fixed, for repair, for refurbishing, for refueling. And then you're supposed to go and get on the road again. See, when the car doesn't ever leave the garage, it becomes just an exhibit, and the garage becomes a museum. Now, we're in a weird time right now. All of us, all of you, you're exiled from the garage right now. I'm here in the garage called the sanctuary, and there's nobody here. I miss you being here. But because you can't come to the garage right now, you may be sitting at home saying, I don't have to do anything right now. Because what can you do? Well, you can still spread the word. You can still share with people. Let me tell you something that's amazing to me. Last Sunday morning, 1 week ago today, more people watched this service than we had on our biggest attendance day ever, which was Christmas Eve 3 years ago. We had more people watch this service on YouTube than showed up for Christmas Eve 3 years ago. That is amazing to me. Why do you think that is? I know why it is. It's because some people have shared. I know Chloe Johnson sends her friend a link to the service every Sunday morning, and her friend watches it and comments on it. Hi, Christine. I think that's so great. I know others of you have shared the links for this service with people. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We have a beautiful light to share, and we have covered it with a really big wash tub. Look at that scripture one more time. Nobody lights a lamp and then covers it with a wash tub or shoves it under the bed. You set it up on a lampstand so those who come in can see their way. We're not keeping secrets. We're telling them. We're not hiding things. We're bringing everything out into the open. So be careful that you don't become misers of the truth. Man, I love that phrase, misers of the truth. I found mine. I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I don't need to tell anybody else about it. How selfish. I had a pastor who said these words, and they have stuck with me so much over 30 plus years. He said, the church is one beggar telling another beggar where he found bread. That's so true, so simple and so true. Telling another beggar, hey, there's food over here, there's sustenance, there's life over here. A couple of years ago, a lady visited our church here one Sunday morning, and I saw her post about it on Facebook later on, and she said how much she enjoyed the service, and then she closed by saying, this is the best kept secret in Austin. And to that, I say, phooey, I don't want to be a secret. I don't want to be the best kept secret. I want to be the light on the light stand where people in Austin and now people all over the country can say, I see some light there. I feel some love there. We would rather sit in the garage and change the oil when we could change the world. That Apple computer, when I bought my first one, more than 30 years ago, it changed my life, but it didn't give me a reason to live. What gave me a reason to live? Well, learning that God loved me and that he forgave me and he showed me how to love others. That was something worth living for. And that was something I could not find through a Google search. You want to honor this church? You want to honor God? Here's what you got to do. You got to open the door. And then you got to go outside. And you got to get moving. Why? Not for adding to our numbers, not for getting more church members, but to share where we have found bread, where we have found grace, where we have found love. You see, my friends, we do the rest of the world a great disservice when we don't share with them what we have found. Open your doors. And then, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time. God bless you.